group.
You're not getting away with this.
No. This is my way of asking for a pay rise.
We are together in this.
Yes.
I keep saying all the comments that are made here are made by editors, and therefore I am not liable for any of the statements.
No way.
I am only a moderator. Martin Mutua, who's our editor at The Standard, and Louis Atieno, editor here at KTN. Thanks for joining me this morning. So, shall we go straight into it? UK heads to the UK.
UK to the UK.
Yes. And here's the thing. It's, of course, elicited quite a bit of emotion. First of all, I think it's interesting. Does this qualify as essential contact only? Because you do remember what Christian Turner, who's the High Commissioner, said. Is this essential or not?
Essential on whose part? That's the first thing. I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think it's very significant that he's making this visit. What you see immediately is bad manners from the UK press. They feel we're a small country that they can bully and make the comments that they're making and giving the kind of titling that they're giving to him, which really isn't fair, because it's an argument we should be having, not them.
Can I just sort of be the devil's advocate? The word criminal on the Sky News report was put in quotes.
It is... if they would have used accused, I would not have had a problem with it.
Right.
But criminal is they have already judged him. Even if they put it in quotes or not, it's not a good thing. That's already showing, setting the tempo in terms of how even the situation is going to be. We have to accept, yes, our president and his deputy are accused at the International Criminal Court. And their cases are going to come up, one at the end of this month and the other one in July. So before their case is heard and determined, they are still they are not guilty. They are innocent until proven guilty. Okay. So whichever way that court is going to decide. So labeling them, I can understand the kind of tension that is within the UK and the Commonwealth countries, because they've been on a high pedestal talking about this issue of the ICC. And now the same person they have been hitting at is now coming to their doorstep. So and how do they behave?
And this particular visit is really important because Kenya is such a key ally, in this region, and being the one, of course, that played the greatest role in flushing out Al-Shabaab, just last year with Operation Linda Inchi. So, obviously cannot be wished away. But are we now forcing them to take a look at their foreign policy and retweak that? Is that what's happening? Because I think that would be phenomenal, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't look at it at that level. It's very interesting. For me, that's a sideshow. In the way that I would understand the importance of this visit. This top of cover issues about fighting terrorism, yes, important, but for me, not the core. The placement of Kenya geographically, the placement of Kenya in terms of having an ally in Africa, that's all top of cover stuff. Look at it historically. How important has Kenya been to the UK? How much business do the citizens of the UK engage in personally here? How much of their interests are in Kenya? How much of their vested interest could be compromised if Kenya went sideways? And I feel that that is the kind of discussion that is happening behind this wall of top cover statements being made out there. The UK always they had a lot to lose if we were not to be able to relate in a proper way. Right now, the arguments we should be having in terms of areas in this country that seem to have been given to these people. That's an argument that is stewing. When you start talking about the strip from Nanyuki to Timau, who lives there? Who owns that country? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So when people start telling me about we beat Al-Shabaab, we are an ally in Africa, I'm thinking, that's all very nice.
Really not the
it's all very nice for international media. But we know the UK and Kenya, we're stuck at the hip.
Indeed.
And they are colonial masters. That's how we are joined together. And we've had all this long history about how we've related. And basically, like Lou was saying, I think the UK has more to benefit than us. Because in terms of trade, even the balance of trade, the UK is tilted towards our side. The people we've been trying to disengage with, like our neighbors, we are the ones who our balance of trade is higher than theirs.
Yes.
But if you look at in Britain, they're the ones who have more. They have more to lose than anything else.
Indeed, there's more to this than meets the eye. But then, what is interesting also is that some human rights activists in the UK are planning to demonstrate Uhuru Kenyatta's presence there, and they're calling on, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and other organizations to participate in the demos, calling what the UK has done as hypocritical in the manner in which they're dealing with this whole issue of the ICC indictees.
People need to engage where they feel they need to engage. If your calling is civil society, human rights, if that is where you will be able to show your relevance, and for you there's clarity to which you should go and demonstrate, I'm not going to deny anywhere that opportunity. But like I said in the beginning, when you look at even the kind of press we're getting, it's just, it's bad manners in the way that they're referring to the president. And also when people are stepping up and saying they want to argue with the UK's foreign policy, I don't think that's something we should get drawn into.
Okay.
Right? But my level of patriotism is the fact that if this guy is going to get any flack, I want to be able to stick it to him myself. I don't need somebody else labeling my president, my deputy president. I should be able to do that as a Kenyan. And right here, I don't need help to do that.
I think on the other side, I think Britain is also caught between a rock and a hard place, because they are also members of the ICC, and they are in that other league that you're calling the first world, developed world. So they've been talking about how people should be treated at the ICC who are suspects and stuff like that. So when you have this situation being presented to you, and then how do you deal with it in the eyes of the other international community? But at the same time, they themselves also are looking at their own interests.
Right.
So to balance that out is a big issue for them.
Indeed. It was easier
Who has really
when
complained?
Well,
who's really sticking it to them? I mean, which country is really making it an issue that the UK is being friendly to Kenya right now? Nobody stands out.
It is just the perception in terms of the
Because
ICC.
if you start knocking down how these other European countries behave, take an example of Belgium. You're not going to listen to Belgium making noises about any African country. We know what they're doing.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And looking at it, just if you pick each country on its own and look at the relationship they have with Africa, nobody is going to be able to have a moral standing to complain about, why is London talking to Nairobi now? And that's what I'm asking, who's really sticking it to them? A lot of this conversation is media conversation.
Okay, there you go. Interestingly, UN has also then, I don't know, shall we say redefined or clarified its position, particularly in light of this, and said, well, we allow all the member states to be able to, relate freely as long as they are cooperating, which is what the two are doing, as opposed to, for example, al-Bashir in Sudan.
You are not going to have... the UN language, it's a unique language. They have their own language. And the way that they roll it out is, when they talk of words like engagement, they talk of redefining. The question
or clarifying.
Am I allowed to speak to Mutu or not? Period. But then they will find the English to make it make sense to them. So UN language will always be long-winded and all that.
Okay. Now, seeing as we're talking about the protests, of course, that are set to take place there, and it being, the fundamental right, and they can protest all they want. There was a protest that took place last week, and this was during the Labor Day. And Martin, I believe we discussed this with you briefly. Of Boniface Mwangi attempting to make his views heard on Atwoli's stand on MP salaries. So, getting a lot of flack for that. Atwoli also getting flack for his statement on him having his own private army. Words to that effect. What do you think of that whole process, Louis? Should he or should he not have been present at Uhuru Park and attempted to make the statements that he did while Atwoli was speaking?
My paramount statement to that is, it was another exhibition of the lack of tolerance we have as Kenyans towards views that are not shared. It is democratic if it is mine to work. It is all-encompassing if it is my idea being rolled out. This gentleman had every right to be there. Boniface had every right to be there. Atwoli also had every right to speak and say the things that he did. The problem we have is, when we do not agree on certain views that come out through certain people, we then start to have this collision of what we perceive to be our democratic rights. But unless we learn that democracy has a huge disease that goes with it called tolerance, we will always get caught up in these arguments that really have no basis. He had every right to be there. That's what the new constitution allows him to do. He can go and speak up and say, I do not like this. And he was non-confrontational in the face that he was not really violent. I mean, he was not going to rush up there and take that guy down physically, was he? So I don't worry about his rights.
So should he have been allowed to carry on? Because I think his plan, and he had mentioned this on Twitter, even days leading up to Labor Day, that his plan was to shout him down. Should he have been allowed to carry on?
No, that I don't agree with.
Okay.
See, now
so he should have been present. So in what way would he have done that? Because I'm sure Martin disagrees with the way in which he did that. Of course, being present, it was his constitutional right to be present.
You can be present, but you need to understand, if you're going to disrupt somebody's function, you expose yourself to the vagaries of how they will choose to deal with it, because they have every right to protect their function. They have every right to make sure the function rolls out in the way they had planned. And you do understand, we're not very good at negotiating those kinds of demands when they're happening then. So if you leave your home to go and disrupt a function that has been announced to be the way it is, then you know you're exposing yourself to their reaction.
Martin?
And more seriously is that it's not only just, it was not just a court of function, it turned out to be a presidential function.
Yes.
How do you go disrupting a presidential function? I mean, there are avenues you can use to deal with that. You can organize street protests. The civil society are already planning for that. That is allowed. They're within their right. But it's like I was saying, it's just like we are carrying out a show and somebody is not happy with it and they would come to disrupt it. It's the same way. I mean, organize yours and say what you want to say.
Let's not understand the freedoms given by the new constitution to mean that we cannot temper our movement, we cannot measure the way we react to people. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that because I have been given a right to protest and demonstrate. It means I just fling myself at everything that I'm unhappy with. Then there's total disorder. Society can't go on.
Then again, should the president have addressed the issue?
The issue
or the way he reacted like nothing had happened with the whole incident with Boniface Mwangi. He simply moved on, gave his speech. Do you think he should have said, okay, the young man, you know, who's being mishandled over there, what is it you have to say? Do you think he should have addressed it at all, or was it fine
I don't
the way
think
he did?
Unless that was the intention of Boniface to get the president's attention. But I don't think it was an issue that should have. I mean, once you disrupt a function, the security operators will have to deal with you.
Because some analysts were saying, well, he should have said something about
like
it.
What?
And
you know, that just it goes to the same thing I'm saying. These new freedoms we are having as Kenyans, we are abusing them. Because now if you're going to bring your president to the level where if everybody sneezes, you want the president to give a reaction to that, when does this guy work? So it means then everybody will be emboldened. That, you know what, you want to get the guy's attention? Go and start doing cartwheels in front of the stage there. And he'll be forced to say, all right, chap doing the cartwheels, come sit next to me and tell me what your problem is.
Okay.
I would have been so disappointed if he made it an issue. I would have been so disappointed.
Okay, all right, noted. However, Atwoli himself did make some controversial statements on that particular day about having his army to deal with incidences like those ones.
Atwoli and the word controversial, they fit very well in the same bracket.
True.
and I think he had every right to say, those were my people, and they were upset. And in the same way you chose to exercise your freedom to disrupt me, they chose their freedom to shut you down.
To protect him. I mean, there's no...
I didn't see any other clarity beyond that was necessary.
I don't think Atwoli spoke out of context.
Atwoli has never been known. He has never been known to sponsor dissidents. I don't think there's a history. Have you ever
heard of that?
He's never been caught in any situation where thugs went, or even as we were talking about Msumbiji, Angola the other day, and to the people who disrupt rallies. I don't think Atwoli has ever been brought into focus as being a sponsor of dissident gangs. So I think he just spoke in the way he did. He was taken out of turn.
And the fact that it is a person who is the Secretary General of the Workers' Union, people who have elected him, he's the umbrella body for the workers. They are there with him, and you want to disrupt his function. What do you expect?
Look at it this way, Yvonne, in the way that you've done Atwoli, did you actually expect Atwoli to stand down?
Well, I would have expected the police to take over rather than his army.
No, did you expect him to stand down?
Okay, well, no.
Yeah, we need to know.
In the man, yes.
The
man that Atwoli is, yes, obviously he wouldn't stand down. But
no.
do we have a problem with the fact that his bodyguards chose to put this situation under control?
First of all, how do we know they're his bodyguards?
Well, it was quoted in a section of the press that they said they were not the police and they were assisting the police who appeared to be overwhelmed.
Like to have people who can assist with that speed.
Yvonne, at presidential functions, there's no way you'll not have plain
down.
clothes of officers.
A presidential function, I would say...
You can't interrupt a presidential function.
In fact, my worry was, it's taking a bit long to shut down. Okay? There's a bigger function going on than that little thingy on the side.
That to me was a sideshow.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if you agree. So carry on sending us in your comments on Twitter. Was he justified in that, even as we move on to other topics of discussion? Sammy says yes, because the Constitution grants him that right. Of course, others would say rights come with responsibilities, and my rights end only where yours begin. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's carry on then with our discussion this morning. Vetting is set to begin this Thursday. Obviously, they start the work today and, you know, put in place a lot of measures, but Thursday is the day it's set to begin. Any issues that you see particularly with some of the candidates? I know there's been a lot of disquiet about Henry Macharia, who's been nominated for the docket of health. The doctors who will incidentally be here later on from 8 a.m. this morning to talk about the issues that they have with that. But it just takes me then to the issue of job descriptions. You know, when you have, because a lot of people are saying, well, you know, you should be in the area in which you studied for. If you are a chartered public accountant, then you should be somewhere in the Ministry of Finance. You should have a doctor in charge of health. What is the job description of a cabinet secretary?
For me, I'd go back to two things which we discussed and agreed. And one of the outstanding examples we did take in was Kenyatta National Hospital. And we looked at the example of a person who's not a doctor running the institution, and we got more pluses than when we had a doctor running the institution. And somebody did challenge the doctors and tell them, what do we have in terms of history? What do we have in terms of results when a doctor was in charge of an institution? And they come up short on that score. But also, the vetting process, I would still go back and lean heavily on the safety of, is there a marking scheme? Is there a particular way, a criteria that is defined? Because right now, more than ever before, and this is part of the new freedoms we have, see, as much as we're allowed to speak more, it means it'll be very difficult to separate somebody's personal whims, personal disappointments in a process like that. So you need to protect it very, very closely with something which can be defined later as this is the criteria that was used. And if that is in place, again, a lot of the chatter that is going on is basically people saying what they think on a personal level. When they start saying, he's not going to make it because I don't think he's ABCD. But is that going to be put down on paper? So people need to start calming down and check out, is the process there? That would be my worry.
Right.
Now, it depends on what this committee will be looking for. If I hope they'll protect people, as Lee was saying, we should not personalize these issues so that we want to just throw mud at people because we don't like their faces or we don't like them or
we had someone else in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or they don't come from this particular party or from this particular community. Like I've been hearing some of the issues for Balala. They're saying, even I had guys at the coast, we want a Mijikenda.
He's an Arab, he's an outsider, you know.
Is that a criteria? I think even the Constitution protects all races and all and everybody. So it depends on what we are looking for. Is he capable of doing the job or not? That's all we need to do. And we also measure the integrity threshold and all those issues that come with it. If they don't meet those thresholds, then they're disqualified.
You know,
but we can't personalize this issue.
A lot of this discussion, when Kenyans are told build institutions, institutionalize the discussion, they're being told build the judiciary. The judiciary is not just there to settle political differences. It's about when Mutua is said to have been in Goldenberg or whatever it is, or when Mutua said whatever it is you say about him, Kenyans now need to understand if there's something that did go through the process that was proven and said, that is what a committee like that should look at. Not that somebody just involved you in some shenanigans and there's no proof of facts in terms of institution building. And these are going to be very difficult lessons for Kenyans because when they're told, yes, this was said, but was there a due process? And if there's due process, that is what they're following. Because I don't think these guys, as much as we took a dive, you were not sitting with us.
Yes,
it was a Panadol moment for us. You know, and we were on a high, and we're now talking about certain things. And then when those two names came in, we took a dive.
Right.
But as much as we took that dive, that is not an institutional way of arguing. You understand?
Right. Yes.
So I cannot then go to the committee and say, I really felt sad, and I know this guy should not be given that office. I don't feel good about this person. That's what we need to protect them from.
That's right. And the public do have a role to play in this particular process. They can go to the Committee of Appointments and say, these are the issues, of course, now with proof, which is what Louis is saying. Right?
Yeah, they can write the memorandums, and I hope even the committee will not just ambush those nominees. They need to give them that information so that they can also prepare their defense, so that they know what they're being confronted with. Otherwise, you know, this country is a country where we are used to opposing everything that is said.
Yeah, it's just
everything that comes out, there's always that niche of opposing. So we must get away from that and deal with issues only.
And looking at the charter and the noise that had been there, as much as I do not know the goings on at the back of that office where these names were put up, really, do you want to tell me that they would be daft enough to just say, put those names out there, let's see what happens?
No way.
So testing the waters.
We just throw them out there.
The water's hot or cold.
They must have known. Madam Gilo is going to come up for 1, 2, 3, 4. And Mr. Balala, these are the bullets being pointed at him.
Okay. So, knowing that, and perhaps these are some of the discussions they had with them, because they did speak with them extensively, even before actually coming out in public and naming them. So that's, I suppose, that process that's taking place there. And Kenyans do need to understand that unless you have proof, because there's a lot of innuendo, and you see this that happens even when you walk in the streets of Nairobi and people are gathering around a newspaper vendor, and there's so much conspiracy theory that goes
It's going to be another learning curve for the Kenyan citizen.
Okay.
When this is done.
Okay. And
another thing, Yvonne, appointment of cabinet secretaries is a prerogative of the president. He can appoint whoever he wants. We don't with disregard to everybody, and it's for them to go through that process and get whether they get the job or not. So we can't also pretend to micromanage the president.
Okay,
that is his right. It's a constitutional right.
But do you think
that because beyond constitutional right? I think we sat here and discussed. You know what? Forget about all this noises we're making. Anybody who's president, you're going to have people surrounding you who will allow you to sleep at night, and who, when you give work to do, they will deliver.
Right.
That is not where you want to appease and pacify everyone, not at cabinet. You want a cabinet that you open a door to look at them sitting there and you think, these are my people, they're going to do what I ask them to do. It's that simple. That's not the place for inclusion.
Absolutely.
It is not the place for inclusion. Come on.
These are the people who are going to be driving your agenda, your policy, and you must appoint people you're comfortable with. Those are the people you know. If I place them there.
What in effect you're saying, gentlemen, this morning, if I'm to understand you, that yes, it's about him putting the people that he trusts, that will run the cabinet, and will give him,
first and foremost, yes.
Yes. First and foremost. So sometimes it just seems then that this whole idea of having regional balance, gender balance, is a little idealistic, is it?
You can look at it in that perspective, but he also has that. I mean, there's no short supply of people in terms of the regional balance. You can get all these people who are closer to you, but they are spread all over the country.
Those things are not unimportant, and we cannot be flip about them. And let's just face it, it's not about him beating a technical threshold. It's just a reality of choice. And even if he wanted to be as all-encompassing as everybody wants him to be, now we go back to that circle we used to have of 40 guys.
Exactly,
really?
Yes, because that would be the question. How would he achieve regional balance?
Let the guy name. We need to go to a place where we are like, one of the things I would borrow, just at face value, is, when we get the level where the US of A is, you come in with the administration. And nobody is going to yak you around over your people. They do the threshold of the parameters that are set so that he names his people. They go through their parliament. They're accepted, fine. But nobody comes to them in terms of regional balance and what kind of things. It is them who are alive for these things. They will go Hispanic. They will go this other way. They'll go that way.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it is his team. He has to choose a team, or she has to choose a team that gives them confidence that they're going to be able to work.
Okay. When we're talking about the fact that Kenyans have to learn, a new way of doing things, and we've mentioned this on the show before, but it is the fact that we're waking up to the fact that we have greater democratic space. We feel like we own the presidency a little bit more than we did in past regimes because of the new constitution. We're now saying the president has reduced powers, and most of those, he's now a servant of the people. He must pass his nominees through that. But the question is, though, we need to have a new way of doing things, a new reality, because Kenyans are now, yes, haki yangu, I know I will vet everybody, I will vet Martin if he's up for promotion.
I don't know what the stake is, but I will tell you this for sure. To the ordinary Kenyan, please wake up and just adopt this message and understand the president is not less powerful than you imagine he is. That is a very powerful person.
Okay.
So this whole argument of we have compromises and stuff, you try and come up against that office, and then you understand it is still a very powerful office. I don't mind that people are allowed to feel and actualize this new participation, but they also need to understand those are still spaces that will be protected. Because if you just open them up to just total engagement, we cannot run a country. We cannot run a country.
Because we cannot have consensus of 40 million plus
people. We cannot run a country where it is the business of every citizen what steps the cabinet will make every working day.
Okay, now you're breaking the hearts of a lot of people.
No. Sorry,
man.
Okay, the president is supposed to be the symbol of unity for this country. Then you can't have somebody who is a symbol of unity and he is powerless. That is not possible. He must be able to flex his muscles around. And the Constitution gives him the leeway to do that. So there's no way you will pretend that the president is lesser powerful than he was. You can have it in statutes in terms of how it is, but in real sense, in reality, you will, when the president moves, you will know who is the president in this country. If somebody else moves, you can differentiate. So, these are realities of life. And we, like I said, why would he go to the pains of campaigning all over and then only to come and then you can start micromanaging him? It doesn't make sense.
So that every working day, the first thing he thinks of, what do people think?
What will Kenyans think?
How am I going to do this?
Yeah. It's no way to live, even for, someone who's not a president. If you're going to worry about what everybody else will think,
I think it's about
at some point you have to make a
guys
decision.
get to work.
Okay, all right, getting to work. Here's a comment on that. Wandera Bradley says, the problem with us Kenyans is that we want to appoint, vet, and supervise. Appointees are just Kenyans, they're not from heaven. Okay, so interesting. But, you can't blame us. We've gotten some space and some latitude. And we've not been talking, and then now the new constitution comes up, and, we're all involved.
You'll be allowed to talk. You can talk as much as you want.
But that's where it ends.
The people who are supposed to do the work, they should get back to do the work they're supposed to do.
All right, so let's go into now what's happening within the National Assembly. First off, I'd just like your comments on the statement that was made by Aden Duale when they were talking about their MP salaries. I think on this issue we are agreed. They will get what they want. And Martin, you keep saying that. I have made my peace with that.
I told you.
Yes.
I'm with Martin.
And you said, yes.
I told you something has to give.
I am at peace with that, and I now sleep better at night. I don't know about other Kenyans who are watching. I know, yeah. Well, it took a lot of work to get myself to that point. I think some Kenyans are still in denial over that issue. But anyway, Aden Duale says, well, if we are greedy, then the Kenyans who voted us in are greedy.
Duale is my friend. Yeah. Please, Duale, you must track that statement. It's the wrong thing you made. It was a bad statement. I think he must have been carried away. I want to believe that, but it was a bad statement coming from the leader of the majority. No,
but when you do think about it,
he's like the government business in Parliament.
You push these guys. We start off the day at 6 a.m. pounding on them. Every corner of the street they turn, you're pounding on them. And the guy is human. You've just said it. They're not any different from human beings. They're not going to flip. Yes, he may have said something. Actually, I did not cringe when he said that statement. I was like, I hear you. Because it comes from somewhere.
Yes, but
it is an indicator of who we are. One, we get the leaders we deserve. Two, we get the leaders who reflect who we are. So come on, you have not taken full responsibility as a Kenyan. And when we say this, I need people to understand, I'm not asking you to be an economist. I'm not asking you to have the competences of somebody who can sit in a vetting committee. All you have to do is just put some thought in it and say, but I, for one, I wouldn't mind, and I know I'm going to be very lonely in this space, but if they could pay those MPs 2 million shillings, pay them. You know why I'm saying this? if this is what it will take for Kenyans to stand up and pay attention, that when Louis says he wants to be a governor, they need to understand, what am I sending this guy there to do? And you know that guy, Dida, he said it during the debate. He said, you know, sometimes you need to be whipped. And you might get leadership that will actually whip you. So people need to understand. And the more we can feel this pain, I'm enjoying it.
Okay,
so if you're upset with Duale, I'm glad you're upset. Because he's telling you that is a language within which you stand.
But allow me to say this, Louis. We get the leaders we deserve. We did bring in some new members of parliament. Some of them, of course, are, you know, from the 10th parliament.
Those guys are raising their hands.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just, guys are raising their hands.
Press the button, raise your hand.
Other guys are standing up and saying, I thought if I stood up.
You would notice me, yes.
Is that where you're pegging your hopes?
Okay.
I'm just checking.
Okay.
Okay, come on.
All right, Louis.
I just need to know. I need to respond.
Okay. So granted, they are newbies, but I think the hope was that they would be able to bring a fresh sort of discussion to Parliament. We get the leaders we deserve. A lot of them are new, with the exception of Wesley Korir, who's the Cherangani MP, who's even quoted in the local dailies as saying he himself is opposed to it. Well, obviously, he has other forms of income. Boston Marathon. But, you know, when you think about it, we were hoping the young people would be the ones to speak. So far, I'm not seeing any of that. We have had some of those members of parliament who are new, who are siding with the old members of parliament. So my question, though, is we get the leaders we deserve, but we did try, Louis. We did try to bring in some new ways of doing things.
I'm sure through the blessing of God and your parents, I know you went to a very decent school, but even in that school, did you ever see a Form 1 step up at assembly and say that they don't like the food in the dining hall?
Okay, great analogy.
Form 1, the entry point, let them find their space. Let them understand where their left and their right is before they even start to argue this. Right now, they're still being foisted upon them this whole argument of should so-and-so come back and be your leader in parliament, or should so-and-so do. Look at the things they have to deal with right now. So it is going to be difficult for them at this early stage to be able to take a position. But even if you go to the other side, as much as the Honorable Linturi got up there and shouted as he did in the media, have you seen any other member of parliament address it with the same vigor in terms of opposing it? These guys are not alone. They're not speaking for themselves.
So when will we ever get the leaders that we deserve?
It's about when will we get to the place where we need to determine the arguments that will go to Parliament. We need to take responsibility. When we're sending Yvonne as a leader, we need to understand, yes, this is who I'm sending there, and this is what it will cost me. And that's why I'm going to enjoy
but
this
responsibility, Louis, up until what point? I mean, you know, Louis, I will do my due diligence in making sure that I know the man that Louis is, but do I really know?
This is what I'm saying, and that's why I said I don't need you to be an expert.
Right.
I'm just saying, if you're going to be the guy who's given 200 bob to get a vote, you need to think again. In fact, that's the level I'm at. I'm not talking about this very intellectual level. It's just that that is a person who you will find shouting now. The person who took 200 bob. So now I'm telling him, tomorrow I'm going to ask him, do you now understand what it means when you take that 200 bob?
What it means?
Yes.
Selling your soul? Martin, Lord have mercy.
We've had this conversation before, even before when we were getting into the elections. And we said it is a good thing that we are having all this kind of inclusion in terms of there are people from civil society, by the way, also in that parliament. Right. They are disabled, there are women representatives, there are all this. I express the hope that if they get there, they will be able to blend these and give us a different kind of leadership. And I expressed also my fears that they should also not get in there and get swallowed
sucked into
by the cartels that operate there.
Right.
I have reported parliament for many years. I know how parliament operates. That parliament is controlled by very few people. Believe me, very few people. And even my fears were if these other guys come in and they don't make a difference, then they're going just to be swallowed by the same cartels. And I think as we are moving on, things are happening, and I'm getting to confirm what actually my fears were.
So is it something about that building? I don't understand.
I
mean, because when everybody is...
This is power politics.
This is
I mean, we have very well-meaning individuals.
Operative word is power. And this power is being controlled at certain levels. And you've got to have certain leverage. So if you want your leverage to come... For me, this is what it is. You're not going to fight those guys at their game right there. And as Mutua is saying, the cookie is already beginning to crumble in that house. It is, very clearly. If you want leverage beyond that, you've got to get groundswell. You've got to come out to Kenyans and get your leverage. But the thing you need to do, it's a very long road teaching Kenyans why they need to be more alive to the situation they're sending members to. But that is the only way you're going to do it. If you're going to come back to us, now, start to find ways to speak to Kenyans, start to find ways to educate Kenyans, start to find ways to empower Kenyans to be part of this discussion. Because in there, I'm sorry, as much as I'd like to tell Martin what he's saying is mythology, it is true. It is a powerful house. It's not an 8 to 5 office where people come in and check out what's going to happen today. People are very clear what they want to happen then in the next 6 months as we speak. There's a lot of clarity where they want that 6 months to go.
Okay.
So you need to convene those guys of yours of putting hands up and standing them. Maybe we can start telling them what to do.
Guys, I like how they become guys of mine.
When it comes to the issues of salaries and their benefits, everything else fades away.
Yeah.
Whether it is the political parties or where they come from, you will never know who comes from where or which party.
It's a simple unity.
They converge.
Indeed.
All the 349, they speak one language.
Which
and
is
that language will
money
carry
and power.
the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but as you continue to call them my people, I will have you guys put up your hands now if you want to speak. So don't mess with me.
I
my newbies, I will stand up for my newbies in the National Assembly.
Seminar for your newbies. Then Mutua and I can come and talk to them and tell them how to do this.
Not putting up their hands. Well, if we carry on, it'll have to be Martin put up your hand first and then we move on. Still staying in Parliament, there's the whole debate as to who should head Pick and Pack, that's the public investments and public accounts committees.
Yes.
Traditionally, we do know these committees, and perhaps just to refresh our memory, sometimes, we talk about these issues and, don't understand it. The roles of these two committees and why they're so important in checking the government, Martin.
Those two committees are very critical because they're the ones which audit government expenditure in terms of ensuring that this, whatever amount of money that has been budgeted for various dockets are spent for those purposes. That's why you find when there are certain areas when Parliament gives money to a particular, approves money to a certain ministry, then they tend to divert those funds to do other projects or that money is stolen or stuff like that. So that is the work of these watchdog committees, to ensure that the money that has been budgeted for goes to that particular development that has been
So with that in line, then, can we trust Jubilee to check and balance
it cannot
itself?
Be. It has never been.
That just defies
the whole checks and balances story.
It goes against the whole nature of
exactly. Even within we borrow a lot from the Commonwealth practice. The Commonwealth parliaments, all of them, these watchdog committees are always chaired by the opposition. Because it's the opposition which checks government. Government cannot check itself.
Okay.
And in fact, the first check of the government of the day in that regard is if you're genuine about saying, we are not afraid of our policies that we're putting out there. We're not afraid of the expenditure we're putting out there. One of the ways you win the faith and the support of the general public is by telling them, and we're sending the guy from the opposite side to check it for you. That's a perception
how confident they would
of good faith. That's what you need to do. So you cannot then say, we're going to manage both.
All right. And in line with that, it seems like they may have agreed to that or not, and we keep hearing of this backtracking within the National Assembly. But not only that, CORD not only wants to head these two commissions, the two committees, but they also want to be the majority. Now, this is where Jubilee would come in and say, we have the minorities in the National Assembly. We cannot let CORD have the majority. So let's understand this scenario. Even if we do have a member of CORD who's chairing these two committees, but the majority is Jubilee, will he still be effective in this process of checking the government?
The idea is when they get to those committees, it's not about being a Jubilee member or being a CORD member. It's about you checking public expenditure. You're put there, yes, by your party. But the fact is that you're there. Even there have been occasions, even in the past, where you've had the committee being chaired by the opposition and the government members are majority. But when it comes to an issue that has to do with the public, they all are in agreement that these measures have to be, certain measures have to be undertaken. That's why
okay,
you have to devote. I mean,
Martin, that sounds very good in theory. Mbadi was here saying the same thing, that yes, ideally when we get to Parliament we shouldn't be, but we cannot divorce ourselves from the fact that they come from various political parties, they represent two interests, and we do know CORD and Jubilee are very divergent in their ideologies, in how they want to run the government, in some of the policies that they even have. So would it be possible to say that truly members of Parliament can go vote an issue based on the merits of it, and not necessarily the party from which they come?
Because like in a committee of like a public accounts committee, you're not going to vote about a political party or about a Jubilee issue or a CORD issue. It's about public expenditure. If you have members who would allow, go that, let's say money has been misappropriated at the Ministry of Defense, and there's an issue here that the Public Accounts Committee has gotten into. I mean, will you side with those who have stolen the money because they are in Jubilee, and because you will oppose what the other members who are coming in to deal with that particular issue? That's where the disconnect is. The problem is maybe that thinking is that if you do that, it means that you're out to cover up the misdeed of what is happening with regard to public expenditure. So that is the crux of the matter.
Well, I would say that would be the ideal. That would be the optimum.
Right.
But I cannot put my trust in a situation, and in fact you just pricked me when you talked about DOD, defense. That's a place which we're not even allowed scrutiny. All right? Now a push comes to shove in that area, and these guys are sitting around the board, and it's about making your president look good or bad.
Yes.
What do you think they're going to do?
Right.
That's the fear that we have.
No, and that is a genuine fear.
Would it be a fear or just an understanding that they're human?
Let me tell you something. It is a genuine fear because when it comes to that situation, people will go back
into
and
their party
gravitate
lines.
towards who their sponsor is, rather than pay. So that fear has to be addressed. It is a genuine fear. If the numbers are going to be skewed like that, when it comes to the crunch, it will be a situation.
I would go the way, I mean, in terms of the watchdog committees, my opinion would be let the opposition be in charge of those dockets.
And the numbers within the committee?
If the numbers are, they should not be varied so much. The opposition, in my view, which I know it will not carry the day, the opposition ought to have the majority in those committees. But it's not something that those in government would really want to see pretty. But if you have nothing to hide, if you're not going, you're not out to going on the rampage to steal public money, why would you fear?
Again, Martin, that would be an optimum. The actual fact is also you cannot expect that those guys on the opposite side will always act in good faith.
That's the other problem.
Yes, so you cannot say because they're outside of government, we expect that all they'll do is check and balance. They can develop an agenda so that everything which you try to do, they can create a situation. And so you'll always have something sticking at you from that corner, and you don't need that. So let them be even within those numbers there, so that if they really need to have it out, there can be a sort of direction coming from there. Now, the sad fact, when you look at what we're discussing now, it just goes to inform the fact that we cannot trust them as individuals, regardless of what side they're on.
Right.
We have to find a way where we can institutionalize those arguments they're going to have. We are not yet confident, even at this parliament we're seeing now, we are not yet at that level of confidence where we can actually defer to the goodness of their hearts, or defer to their competences, or their conscience. We cannot do that.
Those two committees are very powerful because they have these roles of summoning parastatal chiefs. They even summon cabinet secretaries because now cabinet secretaries are not going to be becoming to parliament in there. They'll be engaging with these committees in terms of even their expenditures and stuff like that. So these are very, very powerful committees.
Yes. Let's put in the markers. We can deal with the sentiment later.
Okay, all right. Agreed on that matter. Let's move on, finally, to the issue of the TJRC. I know we've discussed this before. Okay.
So do you have something new?
No, neither do they. Apparently.
Reports not given.
Reports not given.
I don't know.
They were talking about the fact that they're, trying to seek audience with the president. Obviously, he's been a busy man, and he's now, off in the UK. And I think after that he'll be in South Africa. It's a very busy schedule.
You're being rhetorical, right?
No.
You think he's actually that busy? That he wouldn't have time to meet the TJRC. You actually believe that?
And the TJRC,
what is it then? What's the problem?
The TJRC wants to meet the president.
Yes, they want to. They want to.
The one is actually asking. The TJRC wants to meet the president, but he's too busy.
No. It's been reported. Let me be on record as saying this.
That?
Lest the PPS comes for me. I do not have his diary.
Neither do we.
Neither do we. But it's been reported that they are making attempts. Let me say this in the most politically correct way possible. They're seeking audience with the president. Civil society is getting anxious about this process and saying, if the president doesn't have time, release this to the public. We need to know. Now, Chavangi of TJRC has been quoted as saying that the report will be a masterpiece.
Well, is it like a novel? What's masterpiece? Is it like a bestseller?
It's a report for which please refresh my memory.
I mean, which bestseller is this? Is it on audio?
Okay, guys,
we buy the tape? Is it on audio? Maybe we can. I'd like to play it in my car.
All right, gentlemen, all the clowning aside.
Yeah, what are you clowning on about?
Now let's talk about this TJRC report and how it's been long awaited. And I understand this whole sentiment because it's one of those commissions that really, has had controversy from the start. So all I'm saying
right now. No, we're just telling you as it is. And what I know for a fact. Let's not. How do I put this nicely? Okay, let me. Anyway, let's just not make idiots out of the Kenyan public, making such flippant statements like the president is too busy, he didn't have time for this. That's not what it is. If they cannot tell us why he won't step up and accept that report, don't give us these little funny stories about. This is a guy who's met a lot of people. I mean, he even had time for that brilliant guy.
Otongo.
Yes.
So when did he become so busy that
took him on a tour
of status?
Okay.
Our media has been there throughout.
And you're going to tell Kenyans now that this guy, man, his diary is really jam-packed. This TJRC thing is not that important. Really?
Okay, can we talk about the report? Yes, but a very fair point. He had time for Daniel.
I'm just saying, I'm not inclined to believe this is a time challenge situation. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Though they have had time challenges, they've been postponing and postponing and postponing the release of this report, I think.
No, I'm saying on the part of the president.
Okay, on the part of the president. But
on
the part of the TJRC
Well,
themselves.
you tell us. What's their story?
6 months. 6 months ago, they were to release the report. They said they were not ready. Before that, they were to release the report. They said they were not ready. Let's even talk about the controversies from the beginning with Bethwel Kiplagat and whether or not he was supposed to chair that. And he was very defiant and has remained there to date. Out of all the commissions that came up after the 2007-2008 post-election violence, how would you rate the TJRC?
I don't think that the report is irrelevant or unimportant. But one, look at the timing.
Yeah.
Look at what is top of mind of Kenyans now.
Right.
It's not TJRC. In fact, they have to sort of go back and start doing an awareness campaign, sensitize Kenyans again. They have to really do this for a bit now, so that Kenyans can get switched on to the fact that, oh yeah, we need to look at TJRC. Right
it's like
now,
you asked, what was the report about?
Exactly. If you float it now, between people still healing from the Supreme Court ruling and people still talking about the naming of a cabinet and people still waiting to see the list of principal secretaries, TJRC is going to be top of mind, really, right now?
When will it ever be top of mind? Have they crossed that?
They're the ones
has that
who
ship
have messed
sailed?
themselves up.
Yeah. I mean, in doing that, has that ship sailed? Is it sort of like now that report, like you say, it's not irrelevant, but
the report was meant to inform the past election. We never had it. So what will it inform? Because we also have other issues.
But we have another election coming.
These elections.
What would be, even for the president, what would be strategic about receiving that report now? Really?
Too little, too late?
Well, no, we are not trying to discredit the work that has been done.
Right.
But this is a timing issue. That's what it is. And so you come up and start knocking doors when people are doing other things. You don't blame them for not having time for you.
Okay. And you talked about the fact that we are still healing from things like the Supreme Court decision. Let's touch on that a little bit. Raila Odinga has been quite vocal about it in the UK and coming back. And then we had the Deputy President, William Ruto, over the weekend who said, look, you know what, let's respect this. And yes, understood that there's several people who are, quote unquote, hurting over the decision of the Supreme Court. Is it time to sort of put this to rest? We put our trust in this institution. We said the Supreme Court, that is it. It's the final. We don't necessarily have to agree with it. We abide with the decision. And the term that's being bandied around in Kenya now, accept and move on. Martin, what do you think about the former Prime Ministers?
How that hurt the issue of accept and move on to one of the IBC commissioners. So, I mean, people, I mean, you will understand the hurt, the pain. But as we speak now, I know even the ratings for the judiciary have dived. They have dived a bit, and it's something they need to do to be able to correct the situation. So it's a fact. They can pretend and want to bury it under the carpet, but it's for sure the ratings are going down, and it's something that they need to deal with. So in terms of how the pronouncements that Raila Odinga has been making, you know, there are also, people are listening. If he has already come out and say we cannot trust this, the IBC even to conduct another elections. So it means even as we move on as a country, by the time we get to the next election, people already will have this mentality and this perception that this IBC cannot be trusted. So something must be done also on the front of the IBC. He also spoke about the courts, the Supreme Court. He was asking whether it is a court for justice or a court for injustice.
But why? Because the decision was made not in his favor, some would say?
Let me put it this way. One, for me, in terms of the CJA, enough already, okay? Let the guy be. In terms of the Supreme Court, these guys don't have a calendar of events through which, as you're saying, yes, they may have taken a dive right now, but they're not in the business of pleasing us in terms of ratings. And the Kenyan public is so fickle. But what do you want them to do? Do you want them to have another event which they've lined up so that their ratings can now go up? These things will depend on the events that occur. They will depend on the things that they have to deal with. This was a competition. People won, people lost. So obviously there are going to be feelings from one end that these guys, their ratings have taken a dive. So what if they've taken a dive? What are they supposed to do about that now? They cannot create another scenario. As far as it is evident to all, their job is done. We can hold personal sentiment towards it. That you cannot rob Kenyans of. But it cannot be then your everyday speak. And you cannot step up and tell the public, I'm over this. I've moved on. And the same breath you're saying, this guy upsets me, and this guy, he's wrong, and what he did is wrong. So what are you telling Kenyans? I'm looking at a guy who's not ready to retire. He's not ready to go away. But my annoyance is, why don't you just step up and say what you want? And stop having your little lieutenants running around, having this argument about whether to take you back to Parliament or not, and whether to have you as a leader. Sometimes we get the idea that they're running around, you know, radarless and directionless, because now they're claiming we need a leader in there. Maybe that the guys are putting their hands up and trying to stand up, they don't know what to do. Why are they giving us that impression that they're that confused inside that they don't know what their agenda is? I mean, do we have a situation where court members are sitting there and they don't know their left feet from their right? It cannot be like that. But they need to stop indulging Kenyans in this discussion where somebody's sitting back and saying, well, I really haven't taken a position. And, you know, you're nudging your guys to keep speaking about it. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
So if you want to take a position, say what you say. If you're over it, then you're over it. Let it go.
Okay.
But don't come up at every corner and start saying, I can accept but not like. You know, I can say I didn't have a choice. But I'm telling Kenyans, take issue with these guys. What kind of leadership is that? Because what are you actually trying to tell Kenyans?
At some point, it would
that's
be
a lot of double speak.
Yes,
that's just too much double
the
speak.
former Prime Minister
what is
would
the
lead. Yes, would lead his people in terms of saying, fine, like you say, we don't like it, but we're moving on, and bury that chapter. Some people say, and perhaps a belief that the more he continues to express his displeasure, the longer it'll take for his supporters to accept this decision, because we may not like it and the ratings of the Supreme Court may take a nosedive. That is fine, but these are the institutions that we have and we have accepted to live by.
First of all,
and so perhaps, you know, sort of urging that, okay, acceptance and moving on, or
all,
are we saying we're not accepting?
There could have been, factually, 5 million people who shared his identical and his very sentiment on the very day. But he's not going to have that luxury of walking around and carrying around this country, this whole power of, at every turn of the corner, he's got 5 million people still saying, I don't like this, I'm unhappy about this. He's not going to carry 5 million people around for this way any much longer. It won't happen. He doesn't have that kind of leverage. When this country has people lined up and they start working, he's going to find himself in a very, very little corner. So he needs to understand now what is the statement he wants to make. But all this trying to make a paradox out of the situation, you're not going to carry, and not just him as a person, but in a country such as this one, you cannot carry 5 million people around you for 2 years arguing about something.
Okay.
And the choice they have now is to wait for the next election.
Last word on this before we move on to
but
what...
my take is different. I beg to differ, because these are, these are leaders and these are politics. And there are people, I mean, when it comes to politics, there are certain ideologies that people hold, in that if their leaders say certain things, they hold them as gospel truth for others, not for everybody. So it's not also good for a country when you have people making certain statements like those ones, and there are certain people who tend to believe. And their arguments might be solidified by the fact that when you have situations whereby like the current government would lend credence to those ideas, when they, in terms of distribution of resources, the people see things are moving the wrong way. If you have, like we're saying in this cabinet nominees, for me, I don't know, but it's my view, it is the two gentlemen were simply sharing their spoils, and they shared according to the way they felt it. For me, it was not any face of Kenya. So when people look at things in that aspect, they now tend to believe what their leaders would say, like what Raila supporters would believe, that, you see, for sure, this is how this government is going to run, and is going to...
You cannot carry that the entire season.
But you see, this is politics.
Fine, give us a plan. Criticizing this guy is not a plan.
For them,
that's not a plan.
The plan for him is that
every time I stick a microphone in your face, first you want to give me a message of peace to the country, then you want to tell me how, and you're actually still there giving wisdom, and then you want to tell me, then you turn a corner and say, oh, by the way, we were robbed. You're going to do that for 5 years? Really?
This country has been known to be on a campaign mood
let me be very clear.
It's not something that we are advocating.
Let me be very clear. I am not trying to disregard the feelings of those who were on his side. Those are important Kenyans. That you cannot take away from them. But I'm just saying, their responsibility is not theirs. The responsibility is on somebody who thinks for 5 years he'll just go around telling people we were robbed. That's not a plan.
Okay.
Give me a plan.
I don't think he's going to get on to... That's not the only thing he's going to say.
Well, he better come up with a new line right now.
When he was asked, and these are sentiments that maybe he was asked.
That line is going thin, Martin. He needs a new line.
In terms of how they're going to move on, it is for them to draw up a strategy and see, because he has definitely, you can't say this country is united under one government. Yeah. That's not a fact.
You notice, and in that direction.
So the issue is, they definitely, for their supporters, they will need to address issues differently in terms of showing them how we are going to. And because the idea is for them now is to oppose government.
Martin, I'm agreeing. Ideology has to be discussed. There has to be a difference. I keep saying we're not trying to build a choir.
Absolutely.
We don't want a country that sings to one song. And that is why I'm being very clear in saying, that being the case, and this being a democracy that allows for fresh thinking, that allows for people to say, if these are the guys in charge, there must be a way that we can put them in check. There must be a way that we can show that they're not delivering. It can't be by turning every corner and saying we're robbed.
Okay.
Give me a plan. That's
all right. Okay. All right.
Give me a plan. Answer a plan.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to leave it. Okay.
Give me a
all
plan.
right. We want to leave it at that, gentlemen. But before I let you go, as always, and we'll get to Martin Mutua's crystal ball. I think he's the seer of the team. Yes. but wait, no, don't even deny that tag. Yes.
I'm still upset in terms of how security is being handled in this country.
Indeed.
We hardly spoke, and then that gang went elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and then Narok, with the cattle rustling. Yes, over the weekend.
It beats me. That's something that
we will have the spokesman from the police in the course of this week on Sunrise Live, and we will be asking all of these questions.
I wish you even have the Inspector General
himself.
I don't want
because the spokesman would just give you all these niceties about how they're handling.
And he's on a brief. He's not going to criticize his boss. He's not going to tell us.
Come and tell us what
we're working on it. No, okay, all right. Okay.
But it's a critical issue, and what I think Martin is trying to say, we need to find this discussion finding itself at the top of the things that the country is discussing now, and somehow it's just not there.
Okay, all right. This week, what do we look ahead to? Obviously, there's the vetting on Thursday, and but what for you stands out, Louis?
I just want that process to start, so it is a learning curve for me. And it's very important for me that we learn what we need to learn, and so that we can actually get into gear, accelerate in the directions that if we are happy with these people, we support the things we're happy about. When we see the flaws and the faults, we need to start working on those flaws and faults. But it is our country. So we've got to get these things in motion. It's about time.
All right. Martin?
After what's going to happen in Parliament there about the vetting, we also are looking at how our president is going to be treated as the UK. It's not something that we can wish away.
Right.
We need to follow up and see how things are going down at the UK, whether those protests are going. Because this also is setting a precedent in terms of how the relationship between Britain and Kenya, and vis-a-vis even Britain and other countries, the European countries who are member states of ICC, are going to be viewing Britain. So it's something that is going to be an agenda setting.
So hopefully there won't be a shoe thrown at him, like President Bush, former President Bush. He's young, that one. All right. Okay, thank you both, gentlemen, for what is always a great discussion on Monday morning. Cephas, I think you say you want to go to the gym and we should wind up. Not just yet. Stick around with us, because as we talked about, the process of vetting is a learning process for all of us. And speaking of vetting and speaking of the cabinet nominees, what is the reaction of the health sector towards Henry Macharia, who's been nominated for the docket of health? We will be speaking with doctors and nurses on that issue after this short break, so stay with us.
Might get the job done, but now there's a way to add sparkle and fun with new Nuru multi-purpose soap, because Nuru does something no other bar can do. Let the sunshine, let the sunshine. Only long